Welcome to A Medicinal Mind, Wisdom and Wellbeing, a podcast dedicated to the telling of authentic stories and sharing of insightful wisdom, with your host, Dr. Rob Abbott, a physician practicing spiritually focused and evolutionarily informed functional medicine. We seek to uncover truth and wholeness through a curious exploration of the human experience, with topics ranging from mindfulness and nonviolent communication to integrative health and optimizing human performance. You are sure to find nourishment and space to foster your own creative endeavors.
In episode 60 of A Medicinal Mind, Wisdom and Wellbeing, I share an intimate conversation with my friend and colleague, Yvette Brisco. I was first introduced to Yvette as part of her enduring work interviewing experts across the field of autoimmune disease, and specifically MS, in order to bring greater awareness and education to the hundreds of thousands of individuals affected by autoimmune disease. As you will hear in the podcast, Yvette is as authentic and unique as they come. She begins by sharing her own story and struggles with her health, and how that led her into the current career as a health coach and health educator. Just to make things interesting, Yvette's passions are not just confined to the health and wellness space. Spilling her passions over into the world of UFC, Yvette has found a community in which she can share her love for wellness, caring, and resilient strength. Even if you are not someone who has been diagnosed with MS or suffer from another autoimmune disease, I believe you will find great meaning and enjoyment listening to Yvette's story. I've been very fortunate and honored to share some of my work as part of her greater efforts in education, and it's my pleasure to share a little bit of her life and love with you. Well, Yvette, thank you so much for taking some time today to share in a conversation. I'm really excited. We've had some great conversations already to this point, but I really wanted to have you on the podcast to share some of the beautiful work that you're doing in this world. So thank you for joining me today.
Well, thank you for inviting me. I am always excited to share whatever I can give to help people to live a better life. And so this is an opportunity to do that. And I really enjoyed our times together with you, sharing your information with my tribe and helping us to live better lives. So yeah, I think it's a really good connection.
Wonderful. Yeah. So one of the things I've been doing in these conversations, before I can let people really get into what they do and even aspects of maybe who they are now, I want to leave that sort of for a later discussion, really start more back in your childhood, and perhaps share a little bit of what your spiritual background or what maybe your life was like as a kid growing up, to sort of help inform the journey and story to this point for you.
Wow, childhood. So I was actually raised in an apostolic church, and I come from a family that, although sometimes we have sort of different denominations, we're all a very united and spiritual family. My mother had 13 brothers and sisters, so our family reunions were very large. Yes. And we have a reunion every other year so that we can stay connected. I mean, we're connected on Facebook and, social media and things like that too. But we come together as the family unit regularly to keep that grounding that I think is really important to having a balanced life. So that was sort of my spiritual beginnings. And I was one of those kids, my brother was 6 years older than me. My sister was 4 years older than me. And so they kind of hung out together, and I was the little loner.
Yeah.
And so while they were outside playing with each other and the neighborhood kids, I was in the house reading my mom's medical books, because they were interesting to an 8-year-old kid, And so I think that's what started my love of just educating myself and really being able to understand how things work and how it involves people. And then after that, it was, Girl Scouts, and I was a Girl Scout for 17 years, and I enlisted in the Army Reserves when I was 17 years old. And so I did my service there, and jumped out of airplanes and went zip lining and rappelling and all those high things that terrify me because I'm afraid of heights.
Wow.
It's kind of funny, but yeah, the look of abject terror on my face when I do those kinds of things, you don't understand. And then, I came back and I started my family, and I did a year of service as an AmeriCorps, working with disadvantaged youth to be a mentor to them, and got started with teaching as a substitute teacher, and went back to start getting more of an education because I had not graduated with my undergraduate degree when I had my kids, and so I was going back. I got my master's in psychology, and that kind of helped me to really get in touch with myself too. Because during part of your training, you really have to look in the mirror and you have to examine yourself and your motives and who you really are. And it doesn't matter who you think you are before that. You find out some new things about yourself. And so, that was kind of my journey to becoming who I am. And then, the diagnosis added a new element, a new dimension to me. So, yeah, that's what made me.
Yeah. What's so wonderful, I mean, I know some of your other aspects of your story, and we'll probably get into things now. I just love the way you described your diagnosis, not defining you, but as a sort of an element of your journey. And I, as a practitioner, I see folks who inadvertently carry things around as badges, and forgets perhaps the empowerment behind the journey through it. Even if it's something that may not be removed or be entirely cured, just being disempowered about that journey. And you've been in understanding your story a completely different individual when it comes to understanding your health and that journey, and you're doing that for folks. So I was curious, just maybe if you wanted to provide some insight and enlighten us about how you came about sort of that perspective. Because usually when people are first diagnosed with something as severe as MS, it's not like, oh, okay, yeah, I'm going to walk through this one like I'm totally okay. So
I had my moments, in the very beginning, the first night after they gave me the diagnosis, I was in the hospital, and it was about 4:00 in the morning, and I had been watching Netflix, and my Kindle needed to charge. And so I set it aside, and I was just sitting there kind of alone, and it hit me. Your life is never going to be the same. What does that mean? And I started to cry. And, the doctor who had told me, the ER doc that told me, he just kind of, he said, we're going to do some more tests to confirm it, but I'm pretty sure you have MS. There's no cure for it, and it's a degenerative disease, so, it'll kind of go that way. And I was like, oh, okay. And so, and that was it. That was pretty much the extent of the conversation, other than him ordering a lumbar puncture. And so I had this, I had the basic knowledge of MS from all of my time reading medical books, and just, that's something that I enjoy. But not really the part about living with it, right? And so I had to start researching that, and then I had to allow myself to feel, because it's a shock to your system. I knew that there were things happening in my body. I didn't know what they were from, and now all of a sudden I have a diagnosis, and you have to feel and allow yourself to process what's happening. And so even a few months later, I was still struggling with that part of it, because I'm used to being able to pull myself out of a bad mood and laugh about everything. And then all of a sudden I'm crying more than I'm laughing. And, my neurologist at the time, she was like, I can just write you a prescription for antidepressants. And I'm like, no, I'm going to exercise, and, I'm going to just fix it myself. And she's like, okay. And then the next time I came back, my daughter was with me, and the doctor was asking, how's the depression? And I said, oh, it's not bad. And my daughter goes, yes, it is. And and she goes, what's the level? I said, you can hardly notice. And my daughter's like, no, you can really notice. And so then she explained to me that the disease modifying therapy that she had put me on causes a chemical depression. And what I was trying to fight was not just the depression that comes from having an incurable disease, but also the chemical depression from the drug. Yeah. And so I was like, oh gosh, okay, now I can, now I know I need a little help with that. And so I accepted the help and I took the antidepressants. And, allowing myself to do that and get to a different place was what allowed me to make alterations in my lifestyle where I wouldn't need the antidepressants anymore. Yeah. And so, one of the things that was really important to me is, or one of the things that was actually depressing me was the handful of pills that I was having to take every day just for symptoms, right? That wasn't even the disease modifying therapy, which was an injection every other day that I had to give myself. And so it was having to, going from somebody who I had been obese and I had been working hard to get that weight off. And I was so close to my goal when I was hospitalized and then, given this diagnosis. And so I had been eating right. I had been exercising. I had been, getting into the right headspace, and then bam, you get stopped. And so then it's like, all of a sudden I have to take all of these pills and I'm a healthy person. Why do I have to do this? And so it was questioning that, that sort of made it so that it was a little bit harder to accept. But then when I did take the antidepressants for a while and got to a different headspace, then I was like, okay, there are other things that I can do. It's not just about, I eat right to maintain my weight. It's about what are the nutrients that I need to put my body in a place where it can actually start healing itself and compensating for what's going on. And once I could do that, then the drugs, one at a time, I was just able to start getting rid of them, and still, like, I don't have these, long bouts of depression that would require a prescription. And, just being able to, even if you can't get off of all of the meds, but just to reduce how many you have to take or how much you have to take and be more of yourself, that was huge for me. And it's really altered my perspective of just life. Life doesn't have to be something that you survive, right? Yes. Life can be something that, you live to the fullest. And that's my plan. That's my goal. It's not my goal. It's what I'm going to do. It's what I'm doing. And so that if I keep looking at things that way, that yes, I have this disease. I'm a different woman than I was when I got it, but I'm not less of a woman. And I'm actually more of one because I am doing well with it and still doing the other things that I want to do. So, yeah, that's my story and I'm sticking to it.
Yeah. I love it. Hearing the story again, having heard aspects of it, many times, and just, I've had a few folks on more from sort of that patient perspective, and not that, I think sometimes we can, and even that, using that term as I'm a patient, or patient's perspective is sort of putting yourself as a label. It's forgetting we're all human beings first. Sometimes we might be wearing a gown, sometimes we might be wearing a white coat, sometimes, could be wearing, regular clothes, but we're human beings, first. But this journey can make you lose sight of who you are very, very quickly. And all of us, our healing journeys are unique. And your perspective and the journey you took is something that I think more people need to hear, because using a drug therapy is not a sign of weakness or a sign of failure. It's a sign of, maybe in this moment, this is a tool that can be helpful for you. And just as you probably knew initially, intuitively and unconsciously, this journey was going to take you to a place where you no longer needed that. And, more of the problems that I see are either physicians, other practitioners who don't provide the education to say that, no, this isn't something you're going to take for the rest of your life. That's not the goal of this. That's not the intention of this. But seeing the natural iterations and growth of an individual through that process, and then the things that you're doing to nourish yourself, to make that even possible, is quite profound. And so, I was kind of curious, you've been doing so much education for others, with MS and others with autoimmune disease, to help support them in their own healing journeys. And was curious if you wanted to provide a little bit of the, in a practical sense, some of the things that you're doing on a daily basis or recommending for folks to build into their lives to address, MS symptoms or more broadly their concerns with, autoimmunity.
Well, the first thing that I would say is get your head right. The space where you are, your mindset is super important because that is the thing that is going to allow everything else to work. And so when we're not hopeful, right, you have to have hope. If you don't have hope, then there's nothing for you to work toward, which means that there's no effort that you will put forward that's actually going to stick. And that's what we need something that's going to stick because, again, this is a lifetime experience and we want it to be a good experience. So that's the first thing that I would recommend. And, there are apps. I just recently encountered an app that is guided imagery specifically for people with MS. And she even has a track on there that is for the caregivers. So, it's relaxation. When I interviewed her, she actually did a few minutes of it with me on the interview. And it was amazing. And in that moment, just when you're working hard and everything's getting a little tense, and she was able to, in 5 minutes, get my body to relax, right? Getting grounded in nature, different things like that will help with the mindset. So that's the first thing that I always say. The second thing is sleep. Where are you with your sleep patterns? And there are a lot of things that affect sleep, but if you're not getting enough, you're not allowing your body its moment that it needs to repair itself, which means that you actually have to be hitting REM sleep. If you're not, then your sleep is not doing your body any good. And so what are the things that are affecting your sleep? Are you properly hydrated? Most people don't realize that if you're dehydrated, it affects your sleep. But it does. So after sleep, I like to talk to people about their actual nutrition. Where are you with that? What are you eating? What are you not eating? How are you supplementing that? Those are some of the things. And then, your hormones. Where are your hormone levels? Ladies, you make testosterone. And if those levels are off, then, your body systems are not going to work the way that they're supposed to. I like to talk to people about alternative therapy. So, have you tried acupuncture? Have you seen a chiropractor? There are so many different modalities that are available to us now. We don't have to be stuck in one pattern and, expect this one answer to solve everyone's problem. It doesn't work that way. We are all individuals. And whatever your autoimmune condition is, you are an individual. You are not your disease. And so you need to treat yourself like the individual that you are and find what's going to work for you. So that's super important. Addressing the inflammation. We all know what inflammation does, right? It's one of the biggest sources of our symptoms and our problems. And so if we can address the inflammation, what does your sugar look like? Is your blood sugar balanced? Because if not, I can almost guarantee that you've got a lot of inflammation in your body. So we just take apart those kinds of things. And I like for my clients to get lab work done at the very beginning so that we can see where we're starting. And then we map out our goals. And I really encourage people to have a wellness team. It's good when you go see your neurologist or you go see your MD, that's great. But what else are you doing and who else are you working with to help make sure that you have your whole wellness picture put together properly? And so I think that those are the components. And then just being flexible. If somebody suggests acupuncture and you've never tried it, then don't say, oh no, I can't do that. Say, okay, let me explore that and see if it helps. So if you're open to new things, non-traditional things, then you have a better outcome because we'll find the combination that works for you. We're going to find what's going to make you feel better and be better. Yeah.
It's so, all this rings so authentic to you and your nature. And I think one of the things that I feel so lucky about in doing these podcasts and these conversations with folks is obviously, I love getting into the individual stories and the background, but then the added piece of just this amazing education and you've had some amazing health experts that you've had conversations with and discussions with as part of your different health summits, and clearly your skills, the offerings, what you're able to provide educationally to your individual clients in this community is far enhanced by this greater community of wellness. And so it just resonates so true with those words about assembling your wellness team. And so I know I feel lucky. I'm sure you feel that sort of reciprocated, like back to these experts sharing that knowledge. I mean, because yes, we could do so much work one-on-one as practitioners, as healing practitioners, but when you really want to really do some deep healing, it takes a social community, it takes a network, and being humble enough to say, like, I can help, but I need a team too.
Yeah, well, and I give some people an analogy. It's like a football team, right? If the quarterback doesn't have anybody to throw to, there aren't going to be any scores, right? And if there isn't somebody to block for him while he sets up that throw, there aren't going to be any scores. There's not going to be a winner, right? So if you want to win, having a team that works together, and the synergy that can come about from finding a team that really works, and what that means is maybe the first person that you go to isn't a right fit for you, and that's okay, right? You don't have to take just whoever comes along. You have those conversations with them. You find out whether or not you're compatible and whether or not there's a good fit. And you can say, I don't think that you and I are going to mesh well for my healing plan, and that's okay. They shouldn't get offended by that because we have different personalities, and it's fine. But keep going until you find the person that you do mesh with, and then you get the next person on your team that you mesh with. Because once you do that and everybody's working together, your outcomes are so much better, so much better. So you can't give up until you get your team together and everybody's working together for you to make you better. Yeah.
One of the terms that I've been using and trying to build into my own approach aligned with this is working with people in the very beginning in our first sort of comprehensive intake and talking about planning your healing. And at first it may sound like, what are you talking about? Like, I want to be better right now. That's why I'm seeing you. What do you mean plan my healing? But truly, planning out that journey and being realistic with your resources. What do you have? What are you able to practically do? Because there are tons of modalities. There's so many different roads that lead to Rome, lead to this journey of healing. And, but if you're financially limited, then going to the infrared sauna every day or doing this comprehensive, IV therapy, it's probably not going to be it. And so let's not even go down that road, because if you get a month in and you can't go on with it, you're only going to feel more disappointed that, maybe this didn't work for me, when really it's not it didn't work for you. It was just you weren't able to do it because of your individual resources. And so I really want to be a practitioner holding space with individuals so they can see and plan out that process to see what does it look like 6, 9, 12 months from now. Because as you know, while we all want, patient and provider, want that individual, 2 weeks from now to feel like $1 million, chronic, healing from chronic disease doesn't happen like that. So we have to be realistic about the journey, and while being, present and changing things iteratively. If you don't have that initial plan in place, to some degree, you're going to be wasting your time. And I see this as an onus on myself as a practitioner. And I think in assembling your team, if you don't have that kind of conversation with one of the key leaders or one of the key people on your team, that would maybe be a sign, okay, maybe this isn't the right person, or I need to do more research and more exploration of what that journey is going to look like.
Absolutely. And I think too, part of that is accepting that everything does not happen all at once, because it really is a process, not an event. And it's not how quickly you arrive at the destination. It really is the journey. And so when you are thinking about that and mapping things out, don't be in a rush to get to the end result, because when you're walking really fast along the side of the road, right, there's so many things that you miss, right? You don't see that stone that trips you up. You don't see the thorn on the flower that you swipe to grab because you didn't take the time to actually look and say, "Ooh, there's a thorn. Let me pick it over here instead," or to step over the obstacles that come into your path because you're trying to be in too big of a rush. Everything is. There's a season for everything, right? Everything in its time. And that, I think that's a critical part of that mapping out the plan, is to acknowledge that, even just listening to your body and not trying to move forward until, you get to that layer where you're supposed to, should be incorporated in the plan.
Yes.
So in my program for people with fatigue, we have the implementation weeks where they don't get anything new. It's just about making sure that you've got what we've covered to that point and that you're seeing how it's working in your body. And, when you're adding different things in, if you add too many things in at once, you don't know what worked and what didn't. So I think it's important that as part of that plan that you're talking about, you make sure that you have the time factored in that will lead to the best results.
Yeah. One of the things outside of the sort of healing space, one of the things that actually in some of our first conversations, I was really curious about, because it's just something that's fairly new and foreign, to me, but you wear a lot of hats. So we've been talking about, sort of this health world, and it enlivens our soul. It gives us meaning and purpose, and your work in this space is profound, and definitely want to come back to this. But you wear a few different hats, and so didn't know, I would offer you some time if you wanted to share with folks and how you've woven that journey and those hats and those roles into your work, really in the healing profession too.
So one of my hats is teaching. So I'm a substitute teacher, and I love connecting with the students. And so I developed some programs, Positive Choices Day. One of my other hats is as an MMA official. And so I incorporate all of that together, right? So Positive Choices Day is an activity for at-risk youth, although it can apply to kids that aren't at risk because it just gives them more information about making better choices and having better outcomes. And I bring MMA fighters, coaches, referees, people involved in the MMA industry to these schools and have them talk about their experiences, what led them to the bad situation that they were in, and how they were able to get to a better situation by making better choices. And we typically do it as a sort of awareness thing as well. And I incorporate MS awareness into that, just to give these kids an opportunity to see that civic responsibility starts when you're young. And you should always have that as part of your life. So, and then for the MMA stuff, I work with amateur MMA mostly, pros now and again, but mostly amateur MMA. And one of the things that I wanted to do was have a way of increasing awareness and raising funds for research and to help people who are struggling to live with the disease. And so we approached some of the promoters and said, "Hey, would you do your next show as a fight for a cure for MS?" And they're like, "Sure, what do I need to do?" Yeah. So we set up a booth. We have information about the disease. We do raffle prizes. We auction off things. So I get boxing gloves and MMA gloves autographed by, people who are either current top level fighters or who are Hall of Famers or very famous fighters. And then we auction those off. And then I donate the money to the National MS Society or other organizations that are working for people with MS. Yeah.
It's just, so heartwarming to know, to connect with people doing this work. I've shared with so many folks in this, in podcasts and people in my life that haven't got to meet yet in person, but I'm just, my heart fills up with joy knowing the type of work that you and other folks are doing in your sphere, your community, and just knowing we cover the globe with love in these different ways and being creative about it. Some of the most challenging challenging problems take really creative solutions. And we have to really start, it sounds cliche, but really have to start thinking out of the box to to change some of the biggest problems that we face. And rather than be cynical about it, come up with these creative solutions. And I see it, and as you outlined, it really starts with human connection and giving back. And healing and disease is a very isolating and to some degree can be sort of a selfish endeavor. And we totally lose sight in the victim mindset. I know I've been there. I've been on both sides, and you go back to that mindset and you can remember what it was like in the first periods of your healing, and it can be very introspective in a negative way. And we have to somehow step out and connect with other human beings as part of that journey and beyond. So, I'm just curious if it's all of those things and some of the stuff that you've done education-wise. What has been maybe the single most impactful thing that you've done, perhaps with the MS Society or with the MMA group, that is touching and continuing to touch people's lives in a very profound way?
I think it's the awareness part. The money is important because it funds research, and they are able to give things to people that are in need. But I think it's the awareness that's even bigger because I remember I had only been diagnosed about a month or two, and there was someone who was in one of my online support groups who was just really upset and expressed that she didn't want to be on this planet anymore. Mm. And the reason was because her family was not supporting her journey. And she had a daughter and a son-in-law who, despite her having been diagnosed by a neurologist, did not believe that she had MS. And they thought that the reason that she was having mobility issues was because she was just drinking or something. And same thing with speech issues. They figured that she must be drunk. Even though she wasn't drinking, she must be drunk because, who else slurs their speech and can't walk straight, right? Well, when the daughter became pregnant, they told this lady that she was never going to touch her grandchild because of her problem, or what they thought was her problem. And I, with the therapy part of my background, I'm not allowed to address something like that in a therapeutic way because I don't practice that now. But it just really touched my heart, and I thought, my God, the ignorance. And do we allow that kind of ignorance to go on, or do we take it as another teaching moment, right? Yeah. And show people that, instead of jumping to a conclusion when you see someone, other people were reporting that, they would be walking, again, mobility issues, walking down the street and have people come up to them and say, really, it's 10 o'clock in the morning and you're already drunk, right? And so what would I say if I saw somebody who was stumbling like that? Me personally, I'd be like, are you okay? Right? That's the first thing that I would ask. Are you okay? But I wouldn't jump to a conclusion that they're drunk. I would say there's something wrong, right? Because it's not a normal gait. So I need to figure out what's wrong. But does everyone think that way? No, why not? Because it's not their experience that it could be a medical condition. They are conditioned for what they see on TV and, what they see in the movies and things like that. So what happens if through my efforts, somebody can have a paradigm shift, and then when they see somebody who's walking down the street like that, instead of saying, are you drunk? What if they say, can I help? What if that's the first thought? And how do we make that happen? We make that happen by talking about it. When the first person that I talked to with MS after I was diagnosed, she had mentioned it to me once several years back and never brought it up again. And so I was trying to remember, and I said, did you tell me that you have MS? She's like, why? Immediate defensiveness, right? And I said, well, I just got out of the hospital. They diagnosed me with MS. And so I just wanted to kind of pick your brain. And she goes, oh, well. And then she was okay with it because I was asking because I had it. So I don't want to be the person that only talks about it to other people with the condition. I want to be the person that says, oh, you don't know what MS is? Let me tell you about that. I want to be the person that says, oh, you have somebody in your family that has MS and you don't know anything about it? Let me tell you about that so that you can have better communication with them. I want to be that person that talks to the fire department and the police department and says, hey, when you approach people who have mobility issues or speech issues, they're not necessarily drunk. Maybe they have a medical condition. How about if we think about that first? Those are the conversations that I want to have. And when I was talking to, he was a deputy chief of the fire department. He was like, wow, I didn't even think about that. And I said, but that's my job, isn't it? To help you to think about that. And so that's why I think that the society has been just amazing to me. And I was part of their 2018 awareness campaign for MS Awareness Week, MS Awareness Month, and they continue to, there's a new commercial coming out today. And this is where they are sharing with people the recent research that is explaining that instead of the 400,000 people in the U.S. with MS that they have been quoting, it's actually closer to 1 million. And so they included me as part of that commercial to help inform people about what it really is and not, what we were wrong about for all those years. And I feel lucky to be a part of that. I feel lucky to be a part of the movement to educate people to a place where it's okay to be who you are in this world and not feel like less than, because you're not less than. I remember somebody telling me, we were at weigh-ins for an MMA show, and I was having these spasms, and I was just, you could not tell. I had a smile on my face. When the pain was there, I would hold my breath for a second, but then no one knew until we went to lunch. All of the fighters were gone, and then I didn't hold it in anymore. And I'm just like, I was making these noises. And he's like, what's wrong? And I'm like, I'm having these spasms. He's like, did they just start? And I said, no, it's been all morning. He goes, well, why didn't you say anything? And I said, because the fighters were there and I didn't want to show weakness. And he's like, Yvette, are you kidding me? That's not a weakness. He said, that's a strength because you're still there. Even though you're experiencing that, you're still there. And we all know that you have MS. So, you don't have to hide those kinds of things. It's okay to show that. And I thought about that. And I thought, you know what? That's true. Because those are teaching moments too. Right? Everything that we do can be a teaching moment. So if I let someone see the pain that I'm in sometimes, and I say, yeah, I'm having this pain, but you know what? It's okay because that I give them is the thing that they're going to remember about how someone lives with MS. And I can either have a positive impact on them or I can leave them without that information. So I feel like it's my job, it's my duty to give them the information.
Yvette's story is anything but linear. Even with our friendship and earlier conversations informing aspects of the discussion, I still found myself uncovering deeper and deeper layers behind the ethos of Yvette. Unique to a fault, I dare you to find someone with as much resilience and vigor as Yvette Brisco. I mean, it's almost, I was sitting here and the words that came to my, mind were, it's imperative that we be who we are, right? And doesn't mean, and it certainly isn't going to come easy. We have so much conscious and unconscious messaging in our society about what we're supposed to do in any situation. And, we have all this shame and guilt that can get created about, what we do and, what should people think of me? And, it's been helpful for me to go through school knowing radically what I wanted to do. And there were certainly moments where I kind of hid some of that because you're like, it's too much. Like, what are they going to, And I had to be practical to some extent with getting through school. But it's not until you completely, authentically wear who you are that aspects of suffering that you might not even been totally aware of disappear. And that's exactly the journey you're talking about. We don't have to apologize for having a bad day. We don't have to apologize for having symptoms. I don't have to apologize for getting, diagnosed with something. And just to be aware, like you said, to educate, like maybe in this situation, yeah, this person's not drunk. They have a medical condition that's not right or wrong, but the person who's trained as a firefighter, emergency responder, it might not be thinking of that. They're conditioned to think differently. And so we need these little inputs. We need these provocative minds to be able to insert new ideas and get us aware enough to start thinking in a little bit different way, because we're going to be, we obviously all have blind spots, but there's a lot of things we don't know that we don't know. And we need people to provide that space for us so we can walk a little bit differently. And it just, back to what I was saying earlier, just really warms my heart to know this is the kind of work you're doing and that you light up in the way that you are to want to do it. Because, you could insert any other condition, and there's hundreds of people out there doing similar work for other diseases, and I see that as all the same tribe. It's the same purpose, same vision. And I'm ultimately, and any practitioner doing the right job is going to tell you they learn the most from their patients. They learn the most from their community. You can read stuff in a textbook, right? You can learn about it and conceptualize it and know, but until you know the human beings that are walking this earth and knowing their experience, you really won't know it, and you have to remain open to it. So I commend you for that courage and willingness to sort of walk that and have the difficult conversations. So,
well, one of the things that I've learned, and I think this is probably the main thing that I've learned in this journey, is that perfection is a myth, right? When I was heavy, I felt really bad about myself. I did not feel attractive, even though people would, guess me at a weight that was probably 40 or 50 pounds less than what I actually weighed. I still had this sort of I just felt bad about myself, and I was very self-conscious, and I didn't want to be seen out in public unless it was absolutely necessary. And so I did all of this work to lose the weight. And even once I reached my goal weight, there was always something that I could find that wasn't perfect, right? I lost all this weight, and so now there was some extra skin that didn't go all the way away. And, there was always something that you could find. And what I had realized, and maybe it's because, my advanced age, 2020, I'm going to be 50 years old. And I think I've learned a few things in those years. And I think that the big thing that I've learned is this. Perfection really is a myth. And the only perfection that I have is that I am perfect in my imperfection. And I don't have to apologize for that. And so my little slogan that I have, and I even have it printed out on my wall, is that I'm perfect in my imperfection and unapologetically me. And so I don't have to feel bad because, I'm not a size 5 anymore, right? I'm a size 8 and I'm happy with being a size 8, or sometimes a 6, but whatever it is, I'm okay with it. I'm okay with, not being 5'7". I'm 5'4.5". I'm okay with that. I'm okay now with living the way I do with this disease because I'm doing all right. I am doing all right. And I don't have to be self-conscious about it. Yes, I have days where I am, not the hyper and, bouncy. Some days I'm just kind of just mellow,
yeah.
Preserving energy, and that's okay. And I think that we set these unrealistic expectations for ourselves. A lot of it is based on, again, the movies and these societal norms that are not real norms, right? And, I always think back to Marilyn Monroe, and everybody liked her figure. Well, she was a size 12. She was a size 12, right? But nobody called her fat. Nobody thought that there was anything wrong with her because our societal norms back then were different. And so if you are stuck on that, you'll never be happy and you will never accept yourself. So instead, I say, I am my societal norm. Wow. I am my societal norm. So what I am is who I'm supposed to be. And I am happy with that. I don't want to be anyone else. I'm me. That's good enough. So if people can have that perspective wherever they are in their journey, and that does not mean that if you have something that you want to improve, that you should just stop working on it because you're you, right? I am constantly improving, whatever it is. Cognitive challenges from MS. So I'm doing brain games and I am learning different things and trying different things to maintain my neuroplasticity. So I'm always getting better, but my better is good enough. Each time I get better, that's great. And I'm happy. And yes, I'll get a little bit better again, but I'm still happy with where I am because that's better than where I was yesterday. And if we can have that perspective, it changes so much. It changes your attitude. And when you change your attitude, you can change your personality and into a person that does not allow all of the negativity that surrounds to touch you, right? You can be okay and let all of that stuff just brush it away. Just brush it away. Be you and be happy being you. Perfect in your imperfection.
It's beautiful. It should probably be on every billboard in every city, rather than some of those silly ads that we have. It's just such beautiful. It's so simple, so pure. It's so beautiful. And I think, I walked that journey. I mean, there's probably no one who's gone to medical school who would say they didn't have some drive for, excellence and perfection. But, being happy in this moment for what it is, whether it's in joy or in pain, whether it's crying or in complete happiness, it's this moment, it's this experience. And if anything, you're going to walk through troubling times. The negativity is going to be there. Your optimism won't change the existence of the negativity, but it changes your response to it, changes how it can affect you. And that's what we can change. I mean, I just finished reading one of the most famous books of all time by, Viktor Frankl, that Man's Search for Meaning. He basically says, look, there's meaning in suffering. There's, no matter the circumstances, will always have the ability to choose how you respond. And it's so empowering. And I try to share that, well, obviously to myself, but to my patients in the deepest suffering, because there's something, there's, meaning and just actually great effort and just, great effort and pureness to that experience. And we want to run away from it so quickly. And sometimes I want you to be able to run away from it. I want you to be happy. I want you to be free of suffering. But sometimes we miss, as you were eloquently describing, we didn't even see the thorn in the flower that we tried to pick. And, you miss these things that when you're headed down a path so quickly, without that mindset, without that awareness, that's all you're going to see. And I could just keep, going on. There's so much here, so much authenticity, so much pureness to your work and your soul. I'm so glad that you're sharing all of this. And I knew this is what this conversation would be like. It's probably a little bit different than, some of the other folks I've had on, but it's just the pureness by which you speak and the genuine nature of the work you're trying to do. I am left wordless. So thank you for giving us a little insight into the work that you do, and the beautiful mind behind it.
Thank you very much. I'm very honored that you wanted to hear my story, and that I have the opportunity to share it with people, because I think that it's good when you have these experiences. The experiences are made better when you share them. And, having the opportunity to do that, it just makes me a better person. It really does. And so I'm just grateful that you brought me on and allowed me to talk to your tribe and share what I am and who I am with them. Yeah.
I cannot wait to meet you in person, give you a huge hug. And I know it's going to happen someday. And, I want to give you just these last few moments to share with folks, maybe, really anything that you want to share. Obviously, if you want to share aspects of how people can, connect with you, please do that. But also give you the space to share any maybe final piece of wisdom or last story, or just aspects of, who you are that you think would really give this space even more meaning.
So I have a free gift for everyone. It is 10 ways to live a dynamic autoimmune life. And you can provide the link on the page for that. And then, you can connect with me on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. I'm on all of those. Just look for Yvette Brisco. But what I will say is this: don't give up on your journey, right? It doesn't matter what happens. It doesn't matter what obstacles come in your way. It does not matter what barriers you face. Because the barriers, when you get to the other side of them, the process of getting to the other side is what builds the strength, right? So we don't build muscles because everything is easy. It's the resistance that we have to push through that helps us to build muscles. And so our life muscle is the same way. So however you have to get past this barrier, if you need to go over it, under it, around it, or even if you need to. Thank you.
Thank you, Yvette. Thank you. I mean, so much again and again. Please, for folks listening, check out her resource, check out her work. You will not be sorry that you did. There's just so much practicality and so much beauty in her work. So thank you for sharing.
Thank you.
We thank you for your presence and are grateful for your support. If you would like to follow more of Dr. Abbott's work, please visit amedicinalmind.com, where you will find more podcasts, blogs, meditations, poetry, and more, all created to support the flourishing of our collective well-being. If you are a patient interested to work with Dr. Abbott at his functional medicine clinic, Resilient Roots, Functional and Evolutionary Medicine, be sure to visit resilientrootsfxmed.com, where you can book your first in-person or telemedicine appointment. Music in this episode by Tucker McDonald. Remain open, stay curious, and forever be love.